He was not in charge of his investigation. It was shocking how little he knew, and it really changed nothing. We're in the same place we were yesterday morning.
Oh, I think it's really changed things in direction of the president, who said all along that this investigation was rooted in nothing, especially when it came to conspiracy and collusion, and that Robert Mueller, he was exposed as being best friends with James Comey, which was not written in Comey's book. And it's very important because Comey's leaking of his notes to that professor went to the New York Times, that spurred that column, that spurred this whole special investigation. So I think it changed everything. I think today, if you get up and you say, let's go with impeachment, I think you have a party of one. You don't even have the speaker with you.
Well, last night, apparently, the speaker, Nancy Pelosi, had a meeting behind closed doors, and Jerry Nadler was pushing, hey, let's go ahead with the impeachment thing. We made the case today, and she's going, please, Jerry, sit down. Very bad idea.
I guess because it didn't change anything. We're just where we were the day before. It changed everything because it really did clear the president.
You know what really happened yesterday? We discovered that after investing so much time and energy into the Robert Mueller report, turns out Robert Mueller didn't know what was in his own report.
This means now we can move on, right?
You would think so. If you missed it yesterday, if you had a life, you couldn't watch cable all day, although we enjoy it. Here is a montage of the lawmakers grilling Mr. Mueller on Capitol Hill.
Welcome, everyone, to the last gasp of the Russia collusion conspiracy theory.
You do a 22-month investigation. At the end of that 22 months, you find no conspiracy. And what's the Democrats want to do? They want to keep investigating.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot, but this is a unique situation.
Well, let's just leave it at you can't find it because I'll tell you why. It doesn't exist.
Who wrote the 9-minute comments you read at your May 29th press conference?
I'm not going to get into that.
Okay, so that's what I thought. You didn't write it.
The firm that produced the Steele reporting, the name of the firm that produced that was Fusion GPS. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not familiar.
It's not a trick question, right? It was Fusion GPS.
Reason again that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. We did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime.
Collected questions 198 times. 5 times he had to be told to use the microphone. It was pointed in the wrong direction. Can you repeat the question? He said over 30 times. This was a disaster. And that I thought was so telling, the Fusion GPS line, because if you don't know the investigative firm that hired Christopher Steele, that prompted so much controversy and really hurt the credibility of any investigation to Donald Trump, how could you possibly put your name on that report?
Shocking how little he knew.
Right. And how long have we heard the Democrats say, look, it did not exonerate the President of the United States? And then a couple of members, including Mr. Ratcliffe, who's going to be our guest very shortly, said, look, it's not your job to exonerate. If you find a crime, go ahead and prosecute, but it's not your job. Meanwhile, you know, the pundits, every pundit down by the Potomac was watching, and everybody on television, and a lot of them feel that it was not a good day for Mr. Mueller. It was a pretty good day for the president. Listen.
There were times in the hearing when he was sharp as a tack, but we can't avoid the fact that there were times in the hearing that he was not.
They needed to bring the report to life.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, it didn't come to life. It's still slumbering.
Yeah.
In fact, it is in a deep sleep.
Bob Mueller's not a made-for-TV guy, and we live in a made-for-TV society.
You do not have that viral movie trailer moment.
A lot of Democrats in particular used the D word and branded this a disaster.
On optics, this was a disaster.
But you look who's winning now. It certainly seems like Donald Trump is winning.
As opposed to being in jail, where Jeffrey Toobin thought he'd be, or impeached, like almost everybody in those channels thought he deserved. In the end, this was a great day for the president. I think overall, Robert Mueller's incredible, well-earned reputation as FBI director, U.S. attorney, as a Marine, as a decorated Marine who volunteered to go to battle and went in as an officer, all that was used His reputation was used so underneath people could go out there and hatchet up the president and his campaign. Now the question is, when do we find out what went into this investigation, what was behind it? Is it time now for the entire public to investigate the investigators and be as curious as we have been along the way to see how this whole thing launched?
That's a great point, Brian. And, so now we have to wait for the Inspector General and ultimately Bill Barr's investigation with Mr. Durham to figure out what exactly went into it. They asked so many times about the Steele dossier and things like that. Don't be surprised if now
listen.
The very foundation of the case, don't be surprised if he doesn't declassify that very shortly, because then everybody can see exactly what was going on.
We asked Rudy Giuliani yesterday when he was on with us, the president's attorney, if the president would speak about it, as he was, leaving to go to that fundraiser.
Do you know the president?
And he did. He weighed in. Listen.
Their party is in shambles right now. They've got the squad leading their party. They are a mess. You take a look at so many of the people that were the most outspoken, and they say this was a devastating day for the Democrats. The Democrats thought they could win an election like this. The Democrats had nothing, and now they have less than nothing. And I think they're going to lose the 2020 election very big, including congressional seats, because of the path that they chose.
And you know what? The Democrats they needed one or two good sound bites out of yesterday, and they didn't get it. And at one point, they changed strategy, and it was like, okay, we're not getting a sound bite because he's just saying, not in my purview. And then they go, all right, will you read what's on page 189? And he goes, you know what? I think I'd be happy if you read it for me.
Right.
Which was brilliant on his part, because he wasn't going to be a party to trying to become part of a political ad ultimately for 2020.
But now you know why, for many reasons, he was reluctant to testify. Now you know why he looked so nervous about on May 29th when he made those statements. This is my case. Now you know why he had to get that attorney, his chief of staff, who helped get the IT Hillary Clinton's IT person who bleach bit her server next to him during this entire process. He didn't help. He wasn't used. I think he was sworn in the second half of the day. But in the end, he could not defend his report. And some of the questions he punted on, I didn't get. Why are you punting on, did you interview Christopher Steele? Why? It's not okay for you just to say, I'm not going to answer that question. He's in your report. You have to answer the question.
His name is on the Mueller report, but he didn't write it. And it became very clear yesterday, Ainsley, that it was staff. It was staff directed.
Correct.
Somebody, and he had no problem with Andrew Weissman, who we have known has been a partisan, a big fan of Hillary Clinton's, and he was the guy apparently behind the scenes who was running the show and writing the speeches.
Well, and even
it appears.
Yes, and you heard
the staff.
Congressman Gohmert, he even asked him. He said, who wrote that speech for you? He said, I'm not going to get it. I said, okay, you've just proven my point. You obviously didn't write it. The Democrats, were they watching something else, these 2020 Democratic candidates? Because they're still convinced that Mueller made a case for impeachment. Listen.
Now, President Donald Trump did everything he could to obstruct justice.
That report is enough of an indication that the House of Representatives should begin impeachment proceedings against this president.
What are your thoughts about the fact that Mueller feels that the president is not exonerated from obstruction of justice?
Well, that's kind of what he wrote in his report, and he is not exonerated. Look, we know for a fact that the president did everything that he could to obstruct the Mueller investigation.
Well, they have a tough obstruction. I think you could sum up the obstruction part of the Mueller report, Trump being Trump. Now, picture this. You're wrongly accused. You know you didn't collude with Russia, which is revealed in the first part. And then you have 19 lawyers, all of which are on the record hating you and very talented and loaded for bear. You have an entire Robert Mueller with an endless budget, an open wallet to investigate you. Even if you didn't rob the bank, if they're going to investigate you for robbing the bank, you got to wonder, why are they questioning everyone around me about something I didn't do? And what does Trump do? He fights you every step of the way. The biggest reporter, the biggest anchor, the smallest outlet. If you say something wrong, he's going to call you out. And that's what this is.
I think you could sum up the obstruction part of it as the people who wrote the report said they could not exonerate him. It wasn't their job, ultimately. Right. You can sum it up this way.
If you haven't committed crimes.
They could not find something to charge the president
Their
with.
job was to find out whether or not a crime was committed. They weren't able to prove that a crime was committed. So therefore, wouldn't that be the definition of exoneration? If you have not committed a crime, you are exonerated.
You're innocent until proven guilty. They couldn't prove the guilt. Nonetheless, Trey Gowdy had this observation about the Democrats.
What they wanted was Mueller to come in and do their job for them, to issue this report, this roadmap that could lead them to impeachment. The report was one thing. Today was an unmitigated train wreck and a disaster, and they are farther away from impeachment than they were this time yesterday.
That is true, and except for Jerry Nadler and some others are still calling for that. But even as Michael Moore tweeted out, a frail old man, unable to remember things, stumbling, refusing to answer basic questions. I said in 2017, and Mueller confirmed it today. All pundits and moderates and lame Democrats who hold the public to put their faith in the esteemed Robert Mueller, just STFU from now on.
Well, David Axelrod, Obama's former chief strategist, he tweeted this. He said, this is very, very painful. And Lawrence Tribe, that Trump hater, he said, he called the hearing a disaster.
All right, so we're going to have a great analysis throughout the morning. In the meantime, one of the stories this week that has so infuriated and frustrated a lot of you is the video of the New York City police being soaked by these people on the streets of New York City with buckets and whatnot. A third video, these are the videos that we showed you.
That's the one from Brooklyn.
Here comes the guy with the bucket. We're going to see him in a second, and he's going to come up. Yesterday, new video of a third bucket attack on the police. It was Wednesday in the Bronx. The clip is a minute long. People with 4 buckets of water unloaded on the cops who did not engage or chastise the group. The good news is, so far with those first videos that we've seen, 3 people have been arrested, including a gang member from the Crips who was out on probation.
And they had these plastic water guns. It appears to have happened in front of a public school. So now we have the first one was Brooklyn, then Harlem, and now this one in the Bronx.
Right.
It's disgusting.
And this is a wake-up call to mayors and Americans all across the country. If you continue not to back law enforcement, not only is no one going to do it, law and order is going to start falling apart in all these cities. You have to start backing up law enforcement. We all know that there are times they go over the line, but right now it is so overcorrected. We're this close to total chaos in these cities that don't have the backing of those men and women who wear the uniform.
If the leaders don't do something about this, we're going to continue to see more and more. This is becoming a trend, and it's disgusting.
Mayor de Blasio needs to come out and say, I stand with the cops, and that would be it. But he hasn't done it. All right, 13 minutes now after the top of the hour. Jillian, good morning to you on this Thursday.
Good morning to you. Following a number of stories, starting with this Fox News alert now. And this is new information just coming in. Jeffrey Epstein on suicide watch after being found injured in his jail cell. The wealth financier reportedly discovered on the floor in the fetal position with marks around his neck. He may have been attacked by an inmate, but investigators believe it could be a plot to get transferred out of a Manhattan jail. Epstein is being held without bail for sex trafficking and conspiracy charges. Another Fox News alert now. New surveillance video showing a murdered college student hours before she was found dead. You see her right there. That's Allie Castile outside a bar in Mississippi. Newly surfaced photos show Allie with her alleged killer, Brandon Thiesfeld, appearing to reveal the Ole Miss students knew one another. Thiesfeld is in jail without bond. Aisha Husney will have more on Castile's final hours in a live report from Mississippi that is coming up in just a few minutes. And forget alligators. Bindi Irwin just wrangled herself a husband. The daughter of the late crocodile hunter getting engaged on her 21st birthday. Brother Robert capturing the sweet moment on camera at the Australia Zoo where the couple met. Bindi admits, though, it was a bittersweet moment since she was celebrating without her father, who was tragically killed by a stingray nearly 13 years ago. Send it back to you.
Congratulations to her. Bindi's been on this program since she was a very little girl.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
Best wishes. 21 years old, young.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Robert Mueller, as we were telling you, grilled yesterday by Congressman Louis Gohmert about Peter Strzok's apparent bias.
Peter Strzok hated Trump.
Okay.
You didn't know that. The fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
Yeah. Andy McCarthy says we may never know the full story about Agent Strzok. That's sad. He joins us next, but he's happy.
Could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
But I think we already knew that. That testimony from Robert Mueller yesterday renewing some Democrats' calls for impeachment.
We've got a felon right now in the White House. Robert Mueller himself said someone could go to jail for a very long time.
I believe that Congress should begin impeachment proceedings.
Mueller said that there's enough evidence to bring charges against the president after he is president of the United States.
I feel that an impeachment inquiry is really imperative at this point.
Okay, here with Insight, Fox News contributor and former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Andrew McCarthy. Andrew, good morning,
Steve.
Okay, didn't we know all that already?
We sure did. What we didn't know was, and I think this is the big takeaway from the hearing, it's inconceivable that Robert Mueller ran this investigation. I think one thing that was evident yesterday in 7 hours of testimony is he only has a remote familiarity with his own report and with the investigation. He was clearly staff-driven, and that's actually what the president's been saying all along.
It is. It kind of, the president has tweeted out about all the angry Democrats on the Mueller team, but people go, well, Robert Mueller's in charge, and he is a registered Republican, and he's going to be fine. And yesterday we saw it. We'd been waiting for him to speak, and it was not what we were expecting.
No, in fact, if I could have done one thing differently with the Republicans asking him questions, I would have asked him open-ended questions. I would have asked him, why don't you tell us 3 or 4 of the questions you would have asked President Trump? And I just don't think he seemed like he was up to it.
Now people are going to be going, okay, if the staff was running the operation, who put the staff together? And what was their agenda? Because, the whole thing about we couldn't exonerate the president, that's not their job.
Yeah, prosecutors don't talk that way. Prosecutors don't exonerate anyone. I had many investigations in almost 20 years as a prosecutor. In a small percentage of investigations, you start out thinking A is the culprit, and you find out in your investigation you have the wrong person, and to a certainty you find out that B did it, right? So in that situation, sure, A is exonerated because for sure he didn't do it. But 95% of the cases are the gray area where you actually think the guy did it, but you don't have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's most cases. So your job is, do you have proof beyond a reasonable doubt? And until you breach that, then everybody is presumed innocent.
That's the way it used to work.
Yeah, that's
until this thing. Meanwhile, it was a jaw dropper when he revealed yesterday that he didn't know anything about Fusion GPS. What the heck is that? Of course, that was the very beginning of, with the Steele dossier where it all started. And of course, there was also that FBI guy by the name of Peter Strzok, who it turned out had an apparent awful bias toward President Trump. Here's Louis Gohmert asking Mueller about that.
When did you first learn of Peter Strzok's animus toward Donald Trump?
In the summer of 2017.
Peter Strzok hated Trump.
Okay.
You didn't know that before he was made part of your team. Is that what you're saying?
I did not know that.
All right. When did you first learn?
When we did find out, I acted swiftly to have him reassigned.
And the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
You didn't have a lot of good answers there.
No, boy, Louis is made for TV, isn't he? Look, it's sad, but I think it does launch us into where we go from here, which is the investigation of the investigators. I think one of the more curious positions that Mueller took is that the investigation was beyond his purview. When he was asked about Fusion GPS, he's asked about Glenn Simpson, asked about all this stuff, he's like, that's someone else is looking at that. I never had an investigation in my life where you didn't need to know how the agents collected the information in your investigation. Commonly, the defense lawyers will put the government on trial in a criminal case. You need to know all that stuff in order to go into court and be competent.
And so now we wait for Michael Horowitz's, he is the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, his report on what happened back there, Mr. Durham's report for the Attorney General. And you've been saying for a long time that the president needs to declassify some of those foundational documents of of this case.
Yeah.
Maybe now he can.
Yeah, now that obstruction, he can't be accused of obstruction now by releasing the document, so I think it's time.
Oh, they would still, they'd
say it,
of course.
Since they'll say it anyway, that's kind of liberating, right? Who cares what they say?
All right. Andy McCarthy, thank you very much. Great
Thanks,
analysis
Steve.
today and yesterday, all day long.
Thank you, sir.
All right, straight ahead, Nigel Farage, been in the news. He's going to join us live next. The Fox News alert. Puerto Rico's governor, Ricardo Rosselló, has resigned. Crowds going from protests to celebrations overnight.
Brian Yanis joins us live from San Juan, Puerto Rico, with what led to this big announcement. Brian?
Good morning, Ainsley. Well, Governor Ricardo Rosselló becoming the first governor to resign here in Puerto Rico's in their entire history. In a dramatic evening, the governor calling a press conference at 5 p.m., but that presser never happened here at La Fortaleza, the governor's mansion. Instead, 7 hours later, a pre-recorded Facebook message was released in which Rosselló officially resigns as governor effective August 2nd.
Many of you have expressed the right to freedom of expression. I have received everything that you have said, and I have heard you loud and clear.
Thousands watched the 14-minute resignation speech in silence on their phones and on TVs in the streets of Old San Juan before exploding into celebrations when Rosselló said the word renunciando, or resigning. Fireworks were shot up into the air, protesters crying, banging on pots, dancing all night long. The governor said the Secretary of Justice, Wanda Vasquez, would take over as governor as per the line of succession set up by the Constitution. There are questions, though, as to how long she will remain governor, because technically the Secretary of State is next in line to be governor, but that position is unfilled because that secretary resigned. Vasquez is not popular either. There are allegations of corruption against her, and protesters have been saying and chanting, Wanda, resign. The resignation is a culmination of 12 straight days of protest, highlighted by a historic day on Monday when hundreds of thousands of protesters blocked the major highway here in Puerto Rico. Puerto Ricans are outraged by just allegations of corruption throughout Rosselló's administration, as well as a leaked group chat between the governor and 11 of his aides in which they all mocked women, gays, and even those who died during Hurricane Maria. And guys, had he not resigned, the House of Representatives here in Puerto Rico says they would have begun impeachment proceedings today after a panel found that there was enough evidence to do so. Guys?
Beginning of straightening everything out, we hope. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. Meanwhile, according to some in the media, the special counsel's nearly 2-year investigation into the Trump campaign took particular interest in one of the so-called bad boys of Brexit.
The British newspaper The Guardian reports that Nigel Farage is a, quote, person of interest in the inquiry into Russia and the Trump campaign.
If you triangulate Russia, WikiLeaks, Assange, and Trump associates, the person who comes up with the most hits is Nigel Farage.
The special counsel's interested in Trump ally Nigel Farage.
Well, Brexit party leader Nigel Farage joins us now. So you're a person of interest.
Yes, I'm part of the grand conspiracy that took place in 2016.
Can you please explain what happened since you were part of it?
Obviously, I raised a lot of Russian money. I mean, the whole thing is unbelievable. If you think about it, democracy only works if you have the principle of loser's consent. Right. You know, you lose an election, you don't like it, but you say, next time round we're going to win. What we had in 16 with Brexit and Trump was the establishment refusing to accept the results. That's why Mueller was there on Capitol Hill yesterday. That's why those newspaper articles are still being written about me. I mean, Hillary Clinton publicly said Nigel Farage is funded by the Russians. I mean, the whole thing.
Why was special counsel interested in you? Is it because WikiLeaks and that connection with the UK?
The story was that I'd run memory sticks from Donald Trump straight to Julian Assange. I mean, you just couldn't make this stuff up. There is no basis of evidence for it whatsoever. They just can't accept Brexit. They can't accept President Trump. They've spent 3 years now trying to invalidate the result. But as you saw yesterday, they're losing.
So Boris Johnson, you're happy he's the new prime minister, but you're still pushing to make sure he's going to be Brexit and conservative. What concerns do you have?
Well, look, Theresa May 108 times told us we were leaving on March 29th. And we didn't leave on March 29th. So I formed the Brexit Party, a brand new party. We fought the European elections. I won them. I got 32% of the vote. The Conservatives got less than 10% of the vote. Boris, as a result of that, is the leader. He is, in the first 48 hours, saying all the right things. If he does the right things, I will support him and try and help him.
Will you work together?
If he does the right things. But, you know, I've seen this. I've seen the Conservative Party make promises and not deliver. Boris, he said the right stuff. Has he got the guts to do it?
But does he have the votes to do it, Nigel? This is Theresa May had a plan. She couldn't get it passed.
My feeling is this, that we have a House of Commons, two-thirds of which still in their hearts support Remain, and a country that wants to leave. What Boris needs to do is to call a general election, do an electoral deal with me, and together we wouldn't just get Brexit, we'd smash Jeremy Corbyn and socialism too. So there is a big prize here if we can get this right.
Well, the president has some very positive things to say about Boris, and then your name popped in to this too. Watch, here's the soundbite.
We have a really good man is going to be the Prime Minister of the UK now, Boris Johnson. Good man. He's tough and he's smart. They call him Britain Trump, and people are saying that's a good thing. That they like me over there. Where's Nigel? Where is he? Nigel Farage. He's here someplace. I saw him. I know he's going to work well with Boris. They're going to do some tremendous things.
Well, you better.
Well, yeah, he looks at the numbers, and together, Boris and myself, with our personal ratings, could sweep the country. So I'm positive. I want to do it. I've spent 25 years fighting for Brexit. If we can get this over the line, great. But if he does what Mrs May did and promises and doesn't deliver, then British politics will change.
And he has until
completely.
October 31st.
He's got 98 days.
Good luck.
All right.
Thanks, Nigel.
Very much indeed.
Thanks, sir.
All right, coming up straight ahead, 26 minutes now before the top of the hour. The economy is booming under President Trump, and voters are loving it. Brand new Fox News polls. We're going to go over with Susan Lee, who got here just in time. Hello, Susan. Fox News alert, new video, and you're looking at it right there, shows a murdered college student on the last night of her life.
That's Ali Castell walking outside a bar hours before she was found dead.
Aisha Hasni is live outside of that bar in Mississippi as we learn that Ali did know the alleged killer. Good morning, Aisha.
That's right. Good morning to you. So I'm standing in the square in Oxford. This is where Ali, one of the places where Ali was last seen. And there's a lot of bars here and a lot of surveillance cameras. But it's this camera right here that captured the video police just released. So let's watch it together. So in this video, you can see Ali leaving a bar, and it looks like she's on her phone. And then a short time later, a van picks her up. We know from her roommate that she gets home around midnight, but then winds up 30 miles away at a market with Brandon. We're also seeing old photos that show her and Brandon together posing, indicating that the two had some kind of a relationship or knew each other at some point. And then take a look at this strange Twitter behavior. 3 days before Ali's body was found, Brandon's account liked a tweet that read, "If I had a girlfriend, I would not let anyone kill her." Now, we also spoke to a student who took a class with Ali and also saw Brandon out a lot. Listen to what he told me.
I've seen him at the bars before, yeah. He's always out all the time on the square. Not really like a great guy. Came off as kind of rude. Definitely shocking because he never seemed like, he didn't look like the kid who would do something like that.
Now, Ali was a founding member of the Ole Miss Golf Club and a beloved member of the Alpha Phi sorority. The house on campus now adorned with black ribbons. Ole Miss offering grief counselors to students. In the meantime, we are still waiting for that bond hearing for Brandon that hasn't happened yet. It could indicate there's more details to come in this murder investigation. Steve, Brian Ainsley.
All right, Aisha Hasni live in Oxford, Mississippi. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Aisha.
Terrible story.
Tragic.
Meanwhile, let's switch gears and talk about the economy, and it is booming. President Trump getting a big thumbs up from American voters. A new Fox News poll revealing 51% of you feel positive about the economy. The last time this many felt that way was almost 2 decades ago.
Fox Business Network correspondent Susan Lee joins us now. Susan, why is this? Is it jobs?
It's a great time for the American economy. American exceptionalism still alive and well. Yesterday, we hit another record for the stock market. So the S&P saw its 101st record since Election Day under President Trump. And yes, it is the best jobs market in 50 years. I mean, I can go on. So we're looking at the longest economic expansion on record, longest bull market run in history. And Americans are feeling wealthier since you can find a job, put food on the table, and take your kids to school.
To get the labor force, that number well above 60 would certainly be a goal. The other thing I think is important is word is there's going to be a first meeting in about 2 months with China. The trade deal back on track. Will that affect the market today?
Absolutely. So next week we're expecting an interest rate cut. So that means your mortgages should get cheaper as well. Awesome. And that should help the housing market. And then, of course, we do have those U.S. trade negotiators heading to Shanghai for their first face-to-face meeting since the G20, and the markets have taken that very positively this week.
And of course, when the economy is going up, usually the man or woman who has the keys to Air Force One gets a lot of the credit. Also part of the same poll, people were asked about President Trump and his approval regarding the economy. And right now it is at 52% approve the way the president is running the economy or presiding over it. That's up 4 points. When it comes to his disapproval, down 5 points. So that's helpful to him as he heads into 2020.
And 1 point away from his record that he hit last summer as well. So there is a lot of credit being given to President Trump with the deregulation, tax cuts. We're in the middle of earnings season, and American corporations are still making a ton of money. They're expected to make less this year compared to last year, which was a record, but they're still outdoing themselves.
What would happen to our economy if some of these Democrats that are running are talking about $20 an hour? What would happen to small businesses?
Well, first of all, we had the CBO saying that if you raise the minimum wage to $15, you would lose 1.3 million jobs already. And imagine the spending that they want to enact. Like, we're talking about $40 trillion over the next 10 years. As I mentioned, we're already at $21 trillion for debt. There isn't more money to be spent.
In that same poll, though, when asked if a Democrat was president of the country, they are optimistic the economy would continue to grow. Do you find that surprising?
I found that very surprising. So we had 33% for President Trump if he's reelected, approval that he will handle the economy, will continue to grow under another his administration continuing, but also 33% approval for Democrats as well. I found that very surprising, given that 75% of Wall Street thinks that President Trump will be reelected in 2020. In fact, I would say that they are very scared of what Liz Warren and Bernie Sanders and the like have been saying.
Destroy the oil and gas industry. They would raise corporate tax rates.
There would be no trading. I mean, liquidity would dry up since you're being taxed on every transaction. And by the way, the biggest traders on the markets are the 401k, the pension fund investors, like the Fidelities. And so the average person would be hurt if that was the case. So I found that very surprising.
Well, with the stock market now way over 27,000, happy days are here again.
Happy days, 101st record. We're looking at 102 pretty soon, I'm sure. 110th for the NASDAQ. So it's okay to open those pension funds.
All right.
Thank you, Susan.
All right. 44 minutes after the top of the hour, 16 minutes before the top of the hour.
Good morning.
Hello.
Hey, Jillian.
Okay,
Math.
so yes, math is hard sometimes. Let's talk about this story that we've been following because Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is facing major backlash over a controversial resurrected interview. Watch this.
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country.
Those comments coming after the Minnesota Democrat was asked about Americans fearing jihadist terrorism. This is in 2018. She also called for the profiling and monitoring of Caucasian men. A school district will start drug testing students as young as 12 years old. Bushland Independent School District in Texas says kids from 7th to 12th grade must pass a drug test in order to participate in extracurricular activities. The superintendent hopes this will encourage a drug-free environment. Testing begins when students head back to class next month. And look at this, a toddler takes a ride on a luggage conveyor belt. Stop what you're doing and watch this video. You'll see the 2-year-old boy climbing onto the machine at the Atlanta airport. He tries crawling back before getting pushed through the baggage drop. Airport workers running over to grab him. He wasn't seriously hurt. The boy's mom says he walked away while she was at the ticket counter.
Oh, a gender reveal blowing up in a dad-to-be's face, literally. Oh, man. A couple shooting off cannons to reveal they're having a baby girl. Congrats. But the one problem is the moms didn't work until she aimed it right at Dad, sending him flying backwards. In her defense, I don't even think she realized what she was doing. I think she was
watch
so
this.
excited.
Watch this. She does it at him, doesn't even hug him.
She doesn't even know.
She hugs her mom. She's like, we're having a girl.
Who
cares about my husband? He's having a girl.
Are like, I mean, got a little dangerous.
That was cute.
You need goggles.
I know.
All right, 13 and a half minutes before the top of the hour. Janice Dean, it is currently, I think, 72 degrees outside. It's room temperature.
It is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Hi, my friends. How are you? Where are you from?
North Carolina.
North Carolina? And?
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
First trip to New York?
Yes, ma'am.
How is it so far?
It's really good.
What's your name?
Bailey.
All right, Bailey. How about New York City? Isn't it beautiful? Let's take a look at the maps real quick, and I'll just show you the maps across the country. We're dealing with 60s and 70s, refreshing temperatures because of that cold front that moved through. The good news is a quieter pattern. We could see the potential for stronger thunderstorms across the upper Midwest today, so we'll keep an eye on that. And then the heat starts to move into the southwest, where we also could see the potential for showers and thunderstorms. But otherwise, a very nice-looking day. Wave to Steve, Ainsley, and Brian, and everyone at home, and hi, my friend. Yay! Thank you for coming and waking up with us.
Hi to all of our Southern friends, and she has such nice manners. She said, yes, ma'am.
Bailey. All right, thanks, JD. Meanwhile, our next guest got to question Robert Mueller not once, but twice yesterday.
Can you give me an example other than Donald Trump where the Justice Department determined that an investigated person was not exonerated because their innocence was not conclusively determined?
I cannot.
Well, the Congressman, John Ratcliffe, got in a lot of questions. Did he get the answers?